and I'll just move around the room. Here, I'll just do three at a time. This gentleman here. Everybody else have a question or comment? And that lady there, how about? Yep.
Yes, Ron Kaiser here. I got a question with the postal office, and of course I know the volume of mail is way down. However, I recently read an article out of a reputable paper that states the reason that they're really suffering on an annual basis is this requirement to prepay their pension, 20 years ahead of time. Why was that particular entity chosen to do this when we got companies, we got municipalities, we got everybody doing it behind in pensions? Why was the post office chosen to be required to prepay 20 years ahead of time or 15 years?
So, when you say reputable paper, all present company excluded, I wonder which one you're talking about. Just kidding. That's a little joke about newspapers. So I think that it's a little more complicated than that. The Postal Service, as you know, with email, competition's, very, very severe with this. Packages, they're doing really well. Mail, not so well. And so the question is, can you give the Postal Service the tools they need to modernize themselves, to run themselves more like a business without a lot of interference from Congress and government? That, to me, is point number one. Point number two is there are, our pension laws require businesses to prepay their pensions, to pre-fund and get their pensions in good shape. So the question that is raised with the Postal Service is, well, gosh, I think we overpaid or overfunded our pensions, and our pensions are in good shape, and so we should take money from that to shore up the Postal Service. That's what I have a real concern about, because I have seen a lot of pensions in America where one day they look like they're fully funded, and everybody has to prepay pensions. The laws require you to put money aside so that it's there for when a worker retires. So we need to keep the notion of prepaying pensions. They're different than pay-as-you-go programs. They're full-funded programs where a worker has a payroll deduction with an employer match to set aside to be managed so that guaranteed pension is there for them when they retire. The question with the Postal Service is, did they put too much money in? And are they putting too much money in for their pension? And can't we take some of that money and use it to cover operating costs with the Postal Service? I have a real concern about doing that because I have seen too many instances. 2008 is a really good example where at one day a pension looks like it's healthy and strong, then you have a stock market problem, then you have a bond market problem, and then it's not healthy and strong anymore, and we have underfunded pensions. So I don't like playing with people's pensions like that. If it's well funded, great, keep it well funded. The other point I'd say is, if the Postal Service needs reform to make sure that it's operating in a surplus and not in deficit, don't take money from the pension to do it. Reform the Postal Service so that it's operating in a cash flow basis. That's why you talk about 5-day mail with the 6-day partial and not the mail. That's our point is, give the Postal Service the flexibility they need to run themselves like a business so they can get at their expenses so that they can cash flow without having to tap into pensions. I think there's always a temptation where at some moment, and look, the Federal Reserve with a lot of monetary policy has pumped up the stock market. And the Federal Reserve is now going to start taking that liquidity away. They're starting to normalize their policy. So I would be very nervous about suggesting we can now withdraw commitments to pensions when I really worry that there could be a bumpy road ahead. And I don't want to do anything that sacrifices or puts in jeopardy a person's pension, especially if that displaces the need to actually fix a business so that it can operate on an ongoing basis. So I think that's the big debate we're having. And the question then is, should we go to 5-day mail with a 6-day parcel? Should we allow cluster boxes to occur at the Postal Service? The way I look at it is Congress shouldn't be micromanaging how the Postal Service works. Congress should give the Postal Service the flexibility they need to run themselves like a business so they can compete. That's kind of how I look at it. It was this gentleman and then that lady over there. Yeah.
My question pertains to the FAA. My son here, who you nominated, your number one pick to the Air Force Academy in 2009, you've never met him. But you called our house and said, Mr. Bell, I've nominated your son.
Hi.
He decided not to take your nomination. He went to the University of North Dakota, which is one of the 3 top.
That's a big flight school. Yeah.
Huge flight school.
Yeah.
He graduated last year with 7 semester's at 4.0, one at 3.9. They, excuse me, I got a cold. I flew back and forth to California here twice.
Did you guys just win yesterday?
Yeah, they did.
In North Dakota? Yeah, no, it screwed up my brackets, thanks.
I got a cold, so I apologize. I've been going back and forth. I own a small business. I fly about 30 weeks a year commercially, and I'm a private pilot.
Who do you fly for?
I'm a private pilot. No, I don't. I fly commercially for business reasons.
Oh, gotcha.
I just came back from California. I got a cold, so my voice is kind of weak. Long story short, he graduated last May. Number one top 1% in his grade. Applies for a job with the FAA. There's a sequester on. FAA is not hiring. Sequester goes off. FAA starts hiring. But the policy is that all you have to do to apply for a job as an air traffic controller is have 3 years of job experience and move up in your job. So my wife called, so he applies and doesn't get hired, and he wants to know why. They have a biological assessment that they take now. It doesn't matter what you know. It's called a biological test. And my wife called Washington, talked to a Salvatore, and he said, you gotta call Oklahoma City to HR. So she called HR, and they explained to her that basically you can be a person at McDonald's. And as long as you went from the sweeper to the cash register to the drive-thru, you have moved up and you can apply and be hired. There's no more preference for military or no more preference for,
What do you mean biological test?
this is what, explain
It's a
it.
biological questionnaire.
Biological questionnaire, that's how they're hiring. It's a computer-based system. They no longer hire based on your knowledge. A computer does the hiring for the FAA. It's a huge issue. The University of North Dakota is having their congressman up there having a hearing about it because,
I don't understand that. Is it, okay.
go ahead, explain it.
It's just basic questions on where you came from, your high school, your past.
Your sex, your race. If you have 3 years of if you have 3 years of work performance, not what your work performance is, but if you have it. He actually has,
I mean, he has a degree in
In
aeronautics.
traffic control.
In traffic control.
Yes, sir.
He has a degree in traffic control.
he actually has, there actually is a young lady that works at a department store up there, has a high school diploma, has no air traffic control experience that got hired, and he did not. And so we called Oklahoma City, and Paul explained this to us from Oklahoma City from HR. And on top of that, they do not give you a reason why you were not hired. You just are not told, you're just not hired. I'm giving you a fact here. A girl from a department store is hired as an air traffic controller. A kid not in the 1% of his college graduating class does not get hired. And I fly 30 weeks a year on commercial jets. You fly in commercial jets. I don't even know how you feel about this and when you're up in the air that 3 years
I
from
don't
now.
know. Thanks for telling me.
I'm
Yeah.
very serious about it. 3 years from now, we're gonna have people from McDonald's doing our air traffic
I've never
control.
heard of this before.
They had 3 controllers that are controlling now down in Texas take this assessment, and they didn't get.
These are actual air traffic controllers in Texas towers that took the test and could not pass it. Now, they're still air traffic controllers, but they didn't pass the test.
Hey, Kevin Kramer's doing a hearing on this, you said?
Yeah.
That's the North Dakota
Yeah,
Congress.
up at, yeah, that you'd be.
Do you have some paper you can send me? You got something with me you can give me on that?
No, we just, what happens, I got home at 2 in the morning from California.
Yeah, I've not heard
I'm
of it.
actually from Hills Corners.
Okay.
I would've came to Franklin, but I was out of town.
Yeah.
So we drove over here this morning to meet with you, because it's an unbelievable story. It's an
I've
unbelievable.
never heard this before. So the sequester, as you know, is lifted.
I know, they
So that's
started
why-
hiring, they started
right,
hiring,
right,
but
right.
now the hiring practice has changed. There is no more interview, a computer generates it off of your biological assessment. And on top of that, you can't even find out what you did wrong on your biological assessment. The one professor at University of North Dakota has stated in a op-ed in a paper that he would not feel comfortable flying commercially. And he's he's a professor of aviation.
Yeah, no, a friend of mine from Craig that I grew up with went to North Dakota to get the same degree, and
It's unbelievable.
I'm very, yeah, it's a good program. Okay, I'll talk to Kevin Kramer. He's the congressman, so he's.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this. You learn something about the federal government every day.
That's why we're here. I mean, this is not some story that's.
No.
It's not like a fifth.
I thought you were gonna ask about next gen or something like that.
No, this is not like a fifth-hand story. Here's a person who graduated, the top 1% of his class,
Yeah.
and we got a person that got hired from a department store. I mean, what is the
For
logic?
the same job.
But they got it.
Yeah. I that's really strange.
I say so too.
Man,
What is the federal government doing so that other countries are not bringing in products? Are they charging more tax so that our jobs, we
Yeah.
have the jobs here and not losing to other countries?
this is why we think tax reform is so urgent. So her question, I'll repeat it. Did everybody hear it or not? No. So what are we doing about the fact that other countries, that we're losing jobs to other foreign competition, and what are we doing to make sure that we can keep jobs here, sell things overseas, and not lose our jobs overseas? Is that, I'm just trying to paraphrase, did I kind of get that?
Well, that the jobs, that the products are being either taxed or whatever that are coming
Yeah,
in.
the taxation of products coming and going, right?
Right.
So this is the big issue we talk about with tax reform. And what's weird about the U.S. tax system, again, we started reforming the tax system in '86. It triggered kind of a worldwide trend of tax reform, and now we're on the sort of other end of it, which is we have not reformed our code, the rest of the world has, and now we're the only industrialized country that does this. We tax our businesses on what we call a worldwide basis. So let's take Harley Davidson. Harley is a great Milwaukee business, makes these amazing motorcycles, but in a fairly competitive business. Let's take a Honda Goldwing, right? So if you want to get a big cruiser, a big hog at Harley, and if you're an enthusiast, maybe you'll disagree with my comparison, but Honda makes the Goldwing, which is a really expensive motorcycle as well. So here's how it works. Harley makes a motorcycle in Milwaukee, and they send it to Germany to be sold in Germany. Harley will be competing against Honda in Germany. They'll make a Honda in Japan, send it to Germany, and it will be sold in Germany. Here's how the tax laws work. Both Honda and Harley pay the German tax on the sale of that, whatever money they made on it. And then Honda, Japan, is free and clear. American businesses pay the German tax, and then if they want to bring the proceeds of that sale, the profit from selling that motorcycle back to America, they got to pay another 35% tax. So you pay the German tax and the American tax before you can bring those profits home and reinvest in the factory in Harley Davidson. Otherwise, you can just keep the money over there. Or more importantly, build your factory in Germany and just keep making money there and keep that money over there. Whereas Japan, Honda, can keep making things in Japan, selling them into Germany, just pay the German tax and bring the money back to Japan. So there's no penalty for building your business in Japan and for actually, selling it overseas. The other thing is what we call border adjustability, which is a lot of these countries have tax systems that say, we will take the tax off of our exports and we'll place the equal tax on our imports, because most other countries do the same. So let's go back to the Japan example. So when Honda makes a motorcycle and they send it to Germany, they take the tax off of it. Because if a motorcycle is coming in from overseas, they put a tax on it. So it's equalized, because they'll tax that Honda made in Japan, but not if they sell it overseas. We do the opposite. We tax our exports. We make it in Harley, in Milwaukee. We tax it whether it's sold in Racine or sold in Germany. And when that Honda comes into America, it's not taxed. So we're kind of upside down here. So we're double taxing our exports. We're not equalizing our tax treatment versus imports. And I would argue we're losing in international competition as a result of that. The other issue is when we see these big corporate takeovers, it's typically a foreign company taking over a U.S. company. Anybody drink beer? Miller and Budweiser are perfect examples of foreign companies buying U.S. companies. I mean, these are, signature businesses. Miller, Milwaukee, Coors, Colorado, Bud, St. Louis, all owned by foreign companies now. And when you talk to these folks about why did these transactions go this way, I spoke with one of the people at Bud. They said, well, it's because of taxes. It's because it doesn't make sense to be an American business anymore because of taxes. We sell Bud all around the world, and it just makes much more sense to be a foreign company than to be a U.S. company, and so that's the way it goes. So we've got to clean up our tax laws and fix it so that we don't discriminate against, being an American-based business and making things here and selling things overseas. That's one of the whole purposes of tax reform, is to not only get our rates at the same level of our competitors, but the way we tax ourselves, do it in a way that doesn't put us at a huge competitive disadvantage. This is why we think we can bring trillions of dollars back into the U.S. economy and create a lot of jobs. We know already there are about $2 trillion parked on the sidelines of money that could come into the U.S. economy to help create jobs if we just clean up these tax laws. And that's one of the things that we think is sort of a desperate reform that's needed, because the U.S. is on the outside of this thing. How about the gentleman in the back? The lady right there? And how about the I can't see too well. And the jean jacket, is that a jean jacket you got there? Sort of. Sort of. Okay.